Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and coming up in today's newscast, more than 8,000 people have the coronavirus in Israel. The IDF steps in to help the elderly. And looking for something to binge on? Well, we have the breakdown on the top TV series Israelis are going crazy over as they socially distance. Well, over 8,000 people have now been diagnosed with the coronavirus in Israel, with a jump in more than 420 cases in just the last 24 hours alone. And right now, 127 people are in serious condition, 106 of which are on ventilators. But luckily, a total of 477 people have recovered from the deadly virus. Tragically, though, the death toll in Israel has risen to at least 47 just this morning. The latest victims include an elderly married couple in their 80s that passed away from COVID-19 within just 1 week of each other. So far, the Israeli Health Ministry says that the highest number of coronavirus cases across Israel have been recorded in Jerusalem, followed by the ultra-Orthodox city of Bnei Brak and then Tel Aviv Yafo. And shockingly, police have just arrested a man infected with COVID-19 who knew he had the virus but decided to break out of his quarantine and ride a public bus to Jerusalem. His family called the police after he escaped his home in Haifa. And at this point, the other 34 passengers on the bus have now been sent to quarantine. And the bus driver has been fined 5,000 shekels for carrying more than 25 people on that bus. Now, this is actually the third or fourth incident in which a sick person has deliberately left a quarantine facility and put the public in danger. But there is some good news. Though Health Ministry Director General Moshe Bar Siman Tov says that the rate of COVID-19 infection is still growing, it's rising at a relatively controlled rate and shows signs of remaining within levels that the health system can tolerate. Now, starting this past weekend, heavily enforced quarantine measures have been established in ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods of Israel. It's all because until recently, many in the Haredi population have been ignoring or downplaying the health ministry's guidelines, leading to disproportionately higher rates of coronavirus infections in their communities. And so far, religious areas in Jerusalem and the Tel Aviv neighborhood of Bnei Brak have also been the hardest hit. Well, ILTV's Aaron Porras has the details.
Announcing the news Friday, police spokesperson Mickey Rosenfeld says that the city of Bnei Brak is on lockdown. No one comes in and no one comes out without permission. And already, metal barricades and roadblocks are up, and Israeli security forces and police have deployed in high numbers to keep the nearly 200,000 residents in their homes as much as possible. Even medical workers who live in the area are now no longer allowed to commute back and forth between their homes and the hospital. Additionally, public transportation into and out of the city has been cut off. Only buses running inside Bnei Brak alone are still allowed to run, and only essential services are still allowed past the barricade. Things are looking up, though. Prime Minister Netanyahu says that with nearly 30% or more confirmed to be infected, the Haredi community as a whole has finally come to grips with the ongoing crisis. Still, in spite of cooperation in general, there are some projects and plans that aren't going as well. For one, Israeli officials suspect that many ultra-Orthodox are avoiding getting tested to avoid having to quarantine during the coming Passover holiday. Also, the Defense Ministry's idea to evacuate the elderly is not looking doable. The IDF Home Front Command is promising not to use any force or arrests, however, in favor of a mission to show residents that they're not in opposition and that they are only there to help and get the sick out of the city.
In other news, the hardest hit nation by the coronavirus in the Middle East is undoubtedly Iran. Nearly 35,000 Iranians and counting are still infected. More than 4,000 are in critical condition and over 3,600 have died. But Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini is blaming the U.S. and its sanctions for the illness's rampage. And with us to discuss what's going on is Dr. Lior Hendelman-Bauver, the director of the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University. Now, first off, what is the reason that we're seeing this high percentage of cases and deaths?
Well, it all started because the government in Iran was late in responding to the pandemic, and it did not restrict right away the convenience of people throughout the mosques, and even the elections were conducted as usual, as if nothing happened, and these gatherings not being restricted steered up the pandemic and caused a lot of people to be affected and infected with the virus.
Now, what are Iran's current restrictions, and how long did it take to get to that point?
Well, the thing is that right now, as of today, after 2 weeks of holiday of the New Year in Iran, they didn't really know if children should go to schools or what exactly is shut down or conducted. There isn't really a total lockdown in Iran, and even throughout Tehran. People don't really know what to do. So on the one hand, we can see highways in Iran that are empty with no traffic at all, and on the other hand, we see traffic jams of people coming back from the holidays.
All right. Now, in early March, there were rumors that Hassan Nasrallah, the chairman of the Iranian proxy and terror group Hezbollah, was infected after meeting with Iranian officials. And also, many IRGC and government officials are infected or dead. So how will Iran's government change in the aftermath of this pandemic?
The thing is that there are a lot of fake news right now running around. It is true that a lot of senior officials in Iran, not only from the Revolutionary Guards, but also several MPs and even advisors of the spiritual leader Ali Khamenei were infected, and very close relatives of his also died from the virus in the past weeks. So it is very inconvenient and very troubling, but we don't really know which news that are coming out of Iran are really fake and which are the real ones. And there is a lot of confusion.
Will Iran's health crisis change the Trump administration's sanctions?
That depends. There is a lot of pressure coming out from the foreign ministry in Iran, trying to pressure European countries to see if there can be some sort of relaxation on humanitarian grounds. On the other hand, there are a lot of voices that counter that plea or calls to the Europeans, and they say that Iran can handle it alone, and it's not that's serious as it seems. So there are a lot of mixed signals coming out from Iran in that department, because they are trying to show that business as usual, and the way that they managed the sanctions, the economic sanctions, they can handle this crisis as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us with this update. I think our next discussion is going to be about the impact on Israel. Now, an estimated 25% of the Israeli population is now unemployed following strict regulations surrounding the coronavirus, and many are wondering if they're even going to be able to pay next month's rent. How does Israeli law protect the people who can't pay their rent? Well, joining us with some answers is ILTV contributor and consumer behavior expert Vili Abraham on the phone. So normally in Israel, apartment owners can take renters to court or have them forcibly removed if they violate their agreements. But because of this crisis, many people may not actually be able to pay their rent. So does Israeli law protect tenants?
Well, yes, apparently it does, because according to some lawyers, they believe that renters have the law on their side due to the unusual and unpredictable circumstances brought on by the coronavirus. So it means that according to the law, that probably not paying rent will not be considered breach of contract. But it also depends on the particular clauses included in contracts.
Interesting. Now, what about for business owners?
All right, well, to look at business owners, a lot of big retailers have turned to the administration of malls and shopping centers, and they have stated assertively that they will not pay rent as of the 1st of April because there's just no income. There are some malls that have stated themselves that they will not be collecting rent because there's no income and because stores cannot open.
Right.
So it looks like both sides understand that it's a very particular circumstance that they have to come to some agreement.
Now, can renters and owners come to some sort of compromise in the case that, there's a renter who doesn't want to breach their contract?
Yes. Well, what they can do is, and by the way, all over the world, there are laws that say that landlords cannot evict their renters for 3 months because of the circumstances. However, according to the law, what you can do is you can try to negotiate with your landlord and say, look, I've lost my job. I cannot pay this month. So let's see whether, there can be a deferral, and maybe I will pay in a month or 2 months' time. and I will also I'll pay it in a few installments. So it's a matter of negotiating with your landlord, because most of them do understand that these are very specific and unusual circumstances.
Right. Well, how are other countries helping, renters and business owners deal with rent payments? You mentioned that some, I guess, are allowing, pushed off payments.
Yeah, well, if you look at malls and shopping centers, there's really no law to protect retailers.
Right.
However, a lot of them have contracts where there is a pandemic or epidemic clause which protects them from paying rent at this time. If you look at renters, there are states like New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco that have in place what is called eviction moratorium, which means that renters cannot be evicted for 90 days.
Right, you mentioned
and
that.
And New York even has what is called a one-shot deal, which is an emergency assistance program, which helps renters pay 1 month's worth of rent.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you for this very, very informative update. I know a lot of our viewers were very interested on this subject. Thanks for joining us, Vili.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Now, in order to dole out over 90 billion shekels to stimulate the economy, the Israeli government is planning to historically come together and change basic or constitutional law. But while parties across the spectrum are willing to cooperate in issues of emergency finance, the same teamwork has failed to apply to coalition negotiations. Over a week has now passed since the start of unity talks between the Prime Minister's Likud party and Benny Gantz's Blue and White. But new reports from both parties now say don't get your hopes up, as no such unity can be formed before the end of the Passover holiday. Apparently, certain legislation would need to be passed just to legalize unity plan in the first place, like a bill allowing two prime ministers to serve more or less simultaneously. Still, while there are still conflicts, significant progress towards a broad rotational unity government is being made. Labor leader Amir Peretz, who hopes to join the new unity, has now formally split off from the Labor Gesher Meretz party. And the Likud and Blue and White parties have reported compromises on nearly all major issues, with the exception of how to implement annexations under the U.S.'s new peace plan. The Likud says it's willing to delay annexation plans for up to 4 months, while Blue and White wants to wait longer. Now, Italy is among the countries that has been the worst affected by the coronavirus pandemic, with more than 120,000 people infected and over 15,000 dead. Now, the Israeli humanitarian aid agency IsraAid is going to be providing support to those on the ground, and joining us with the details is Yotam Politzer, the CEO of IsraAid. So what kind of assistance are you guys providing to the community in Italy right now?
So we partnered with the Jewish community in Italy, and they have a welfare arm that takes care of the most vulnerable people in the community. And the community has been devastated by the virus, and they requested us to support them with both psychological care. So we have Israeli, Italian psychologists that are providing that. And in addition to that, we're also supporting the volunteers from the community who are working directly with the elderly. So we're going to provide them with support to give food and medicine and the most essential relief items for the elderly in the Jewish community in Rome.
Now, has IsraAid been affected by COVID-19 in terms of its ability to operate on the ground?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, the first priority for us is the safety of our staff. I've been in this field for 13 years, and I don't remember anything in this scale. I worked in the Ebola outbreak, which was somewhat similar, but it's a whole new game here. So yes, we had to evacuate some of our staff from places that don't have any medical facilities, and we had to shift a lot of our program to either online or programs that we can't meet directly with the community, and we shifted all of our priorities. In many countries in Africa, for example, now we are doing something very basic. We're installing hand washing stations so people can wash their hands, because it didn't exist before in many of the refugee camps and the places we operate.
Well, that's actually exactly what I wanted to ask you about. I mean, how's your organization been helping worldwide, not just in Italy? I'm assuming that you've been helping in other countries as well.
So yes, we're in 15 countries right now, which is includes our 13 countries of ongoing operations, and Italy and the U.S. As of last week, where we are also providing a lot of stress management and anxiety support for people suffering from anxiety. Globally, we have three main things we're doing. One is direct relief. We send protection gear, we send medicine, we distribute food, we provide people with access to clean water, which is the basics for prevention. The second thing is we're doing a lot of health education. We're trying to fight what the WHO recently called the infodemic, the pandemic of information, the misinformation that goes online. And our health experts actually developed webinars and tools in many different languages to make sure that the local population in the most vulnerable places are really aware of this virus and how they can protect themselves and their families. Beautiful. And the third thing is really about management of stress and anxiety and the panic that involved with this pandemic. As you probably know, we've been working in the field of trauma reduction for many years in many contexts. And we found that to be a big gap that no one's speaking about, the mental health aspect of the coronavirus.
Well, it's a huge one. It's incredible what Israel Aid does on a daily basis. I'm so impressed by your organization. Again, thank you so much for joining us with this update.
Thank you.
Now, speaking of lending a hand, an amazing Israeli technology firm is now getting involved in the search for better ways to test for COVID-19.
Companies all over the world have now been scrambling to tool their shops to produce desperately needed protective and medical equipment. But among the most important things is a need for better testing method. And Israeli tech firm UVI has a solution. Originally created to detect bombs and explosives attached to cars, UVI's hands-off drive-through inspection system can now also detect the occupants' temperatures. So basically, it can tell you if the person in the car has a fever or not, one of the most common symptoms of COVID-19. And that ensures that workers outside the vehicle are less likely to be exposed to infected people without knowing. And that's not all. While the drive-through inspection is best suited for emergency lanes at hospitals and healthcare facilities, UVI says that this technology has also been adapted to help delivery, food, auto mechanic, medicine, and emergency fleet operators. Then finally, the company is already prepared to set its technology up at checkpoints throughout the U.S. upon demand. But above all else, UVI is operating at a not-for-profit basis amidst the health crisis, and they're calling on other companies to do the same.
All right, let's face it, the coronavirus pandemic hasn't exactly made it easy to lead a healthy lifestyle. A lot of us are finding most of our time spent on the couch, and it's not necessarily a salad that is in our hands. Well, how can we maintain a balanced nutritional diet and stay in shape without leaving our homes? Very good questions that hopefully we're going to get some answers from Mona Boaz, Professor Mona Boaz. So let's start with food. How can you maintain a healthy and balanced menu when you just aren't getting as much exercise?
Well, you can get a balanced diet whether or not you're getting exercise. Whether or not you're getting exercise, you can make sure that you're eating according to the recommendations of, for example, the Ministry of Health of Israel. Those recommendations are available in English, or any of the bodies, for example, the World Health Organization. They're all in line with one another, but you can definitely do it. Make sure you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables. Make sure you're not eating junk.
Of course, but a lot of people find it harder to maintain that type of lifestyle when they're just kind of vegging around at home, right? So that's kind of, how do you have the mental strength to do that, you know?
Okay, well, I think one thing I would recommend is, first of all, to get up off the couch and move. And there's a million ways to do that. I know we're limited to 100 meters. If you walk it enough times, you're putting on some distance. Additionally, on YouTube, there's millions of videos, and there are a lot of exercise experts who are giving free lessons through Zoom right now. So avail yourselves of those things. Don't sit down. That's the worst thing you can do. And in addition, you don't have to give yourself carte blanche to eat everything that's in the refrigerator. I find that one thing that's very useful is to record everything you eat. And you can either do that by writing it down, or people who are a little more tech savvy can be using apps like ProTracker, for example. And these are very good ways to keep yourself in line.
Now, are there any foods that need to be added to the menu to strengthen our immune systems right now?
There's not any evidence that suggests a specific food is going to help you. We know that there are certain nutrients that do benefit the immune system. For example, if you have adequate vitamin C, which we know comes from, for example, citrus fruits and strawberries and peppers, things like zinc, which comes from nuts and seeds and meat. So if you're getting an adequate amount of those nutrients, that should be the boost that your immune system needs. I am absolutely not saying that you need to take supplements. In fact, I'm against supplements unless you have a documented deficiency.
Interesting. All right. Well, that's actually very helpful because a lot of people think that they need to be taking all these vitamins now, and you're saying just the opposite. So thank you for this update. I hope that some of us are going to be able to take your advice to heart.
Okay, excellent. Everyone should be healthy.
All right, so with all of this time stuck indoors amidst the coronavirus pandemic, we have a lot of spare time, which means many of us are Netflix and chilling to our heart's content. But what are the top Netflix shows here in Israel? And joining us with the details is ILTV's Nittany Manson, of course.
Hello, Natasha.
Hello.
So Netflix does this really cool thing where they list the top 10 shows being watched in your region. So I want to break down some of what everyone's binging in Israel. First up is Money Heist, otherwise known as Casa de Papel.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a crazy show. This show is definitely a crowd pleaser worldwide. It's basically a Spanish soap opera gone wild. It's about an unusual group of criminals that band together to carry out the most impressive bank robbery in history. And their mission ends up becoming almost a source of revolution against the Spanish government.
Well, the new season 4, actually just came out, so many of us have been waiting for it, and I'm not surprised that it's #1 in Israel right now. It actually makes sense. But what is up next?
Yeah, well, number 2 would be Unorthodox, a show we've definitely spoken about frequently on ILTV. Yeah. It's the story of a young girl who is raised in a New York Hasidic Jewish community and ends up running away to Berlin after an unsuccessful year of marriage. The main character, Esti, is actually played by the Israeli actress Shira Haas.
That's right, and there's also a bunch of other Israeli actors in this show. I've seen it myself already, and it's really an amazing limited series. I wish it actually would continue.
Yeah, there weren't enough episodes, I think. No. But Israelis are raving about it. Moving on, though, number 3 is actually another Spanish show called Toy Boy. This one follows the life of a male stripper as he seeks revenge for being wrongly imprisoned after he's charged with killing his rich ex-lover's husband. So let's just say you've got a lot of attractive men in this series and a lot of drama too.
Yeah, the dream, right? I tried starting that show, but I actually couldn't get into it. I guess I have other interests. What is next, though?
Well, next is Ozark, which is an American crime TV drama that is a / thriller about a financial advisor who drags his family from Chicago to Missouri, where he has to launder $500 million in 5 years to appease a drug boss.
Yeah, that doesn't sound stressful at all.
No, not at all. The show is dark, but it's a hit, and it has Jason Bateman in it, who I love.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyways, moving on. The next and final series I'm going to be sharing today, but is perhaps the most important, is Tiger King.
Yeah, this show is hands down the craziest documentary series I've ever seen in my life. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, I mean, just describing it sounds like I'm lying, but basically, Tiger King gets close up and personal with individuals in America who are big cat owners. We're talking tigers, lions, cheetahs, you name it, and specifically starts off by following the life of Joe Exotic, a gun-toting operator of an Oklahoma big cat park who's accused of hiring someone to murder his chief rival, who is herself a self-proclaimed animal rights activist.
Yeah, there's so many levels to the show, and while I can't stand watching anything that includes animals being harmed, the show is just so well done and important, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I've seen basically all of these shows, but I guess you could say that I also have some time on my hands.
We all do.
All right, Nittany, thanks for joining us, and again, all of you watching now can get a taste of what Israeli locals like. All right, so let's take a look at the weather forecast. It's a new week and it's starting out steamy. Today we're looking at partly cloudy skies with a high of 32 degrees Celsius or 90 Fahrenheit. You can enjoy the summer heat today because the temperature should dip back down by tomorrow with a high of 21 Celsius or 69 degrees Fahrenheit. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. This is just amazing in every single way. Even the dogs are washing their hands, but that wasn't a full 20 seconds. So clearly they don't understand how to do it. What's funny actually is here in Israel, you're seeing commercials every day on TV showing you how to properly wash your hands. So I can now be a critic. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.64 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Natasha Kirchek, and thanks so much for watching.